I just finished watching Squid Game Season 3, and wow. I thought I was ready for it, but honestly, nothing could have prepared me for the emotional roller coaster this final season put us through. We're talking about some of the most devastating character departures I've ever witnessed on screen. And trust me, I've seen my fair share of brutal eliminations in this series. But here's the thing, Season 3 wasn't just about the shocking eliminations. It was about watching these incredibly complex characters we'd grown to love get pushed to their absolute breaking points. Each farewell hit differently because we'd invested so much in their stories, their struggles, their hopes. And honestly, some of these departures still have me staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., wondering how Hwang Dong-hyuk came up with such cruel yet brilliant storytelling. Let's dive into the 10 most tragic eliminations that absolutely destroyed our hearts, shall we? Subscribe to our channel and give us a like. Let's go. Player 120, Cho Hyun-ju, the Selfless Protector's Final Stand. Oh man, where do I even start with Hyun-ju? This woman was basically the heart and soul of Season 3, you know? Here's someone who lost everything, her military career, her family, her friends, just for wanting to live as her authentic self. But instead of becoming bitter, she became this incredible protector figure for everyone around her. The way she met her end during the hide-and-seek game was it's devastating on so many levels. She literally found the exit, had the keys in her hand, could have walked away and survived. But what does she do? She goes back for Joon-hee and Gumja because she couldn't bear the thought of leaving them behind. That's pure heroism right there. What makes it even more heartbreaking is that she was eliminated by Myung-gi, the father of the very baby she was trying to protect. The irony is just crushing. Here's this woman who spent her entire arc protecting the most vulnerable players, and she gets taken out by someone who should have been grateful for what she was doing. The look on her face when she realized what was happening, that single tear rolling down her cheek as she fell. I'm getting emotional just thinking about it. Hyun-ju represented hope in this cruel world. She showed us that even when society rejects you, even when you lose everything, you can still choose to be good. You can still choose to protect others. Her military training made her invaluable during the rebellion, but it was her humanity that made her irreplaceable to the viewers. Player 222, Kim Joon-hee, a mother's ultimate sacrifice. Joon-hee's story arc is probably one of the most emotionally complex in the entire series. Think about it. She enters the games pregnant, gives birth during one of the most violent challenges, and then has to make impossible choices about her child's survival. Her elimination during the jump rope game was absolutely gut-wrenching. She knew she couldn't make it across with her injured ankle, knew that Gi-hun would risk everything to save her, and made the conscious decision to let go. But it wasn't giving up. It was the most selfless act imaginable. She sacrificed herself to ensure both Gi-hun and her baby would have a chance. What really gets me is how she spent her final moments. Instead of begging for her life or cursing her fate, she was giving Gi-hun instructions about her daughter. "Take care of her," she whispered, and then she just let go. That's the strength of a mother right there. Even in her final seconds, she was thinking about her child's future. Joon-hee's character represented the impossible position so many people find themselves in. Trapped by circumstances beyond their control, forced to make choices no one should ever have to make. Her pregnancy wasn't just a plot device, it was a symbol of hope and vulnerability existing simultaneously in this cruel world. Player 149, Jung Gumja, the mother's impossible choice. Honestly, Gumja's storyline might be the most tragic of the entire series. This woman entered the games solely to help her son, to pay off his debts and give him a better life. But when push came to shove, she found herself in a situation where protecting an innocent baby meant harming her own child. The moment she had to stop Young-sik from attacking Jun-hee and her newborn, what kind of choice is that for a mother? She loved her son desperately, but she couldn't stand by and watch him harm an innocent infant. So she made the split-second decision that would haunt her for the rest of her short life. But here's what really destroys me. It wasn't just the act itself, it was what came after. Gumja couldn't live with what she'd done. The guilt consumed her completely. She tried to convince the other players to end the games, to think about the baby. But when that failed, she saw no way forward. Her decision to end her own life that night was the final tragedy in a series of impossible choices. What makes Gumja's story so powerful is how it explores the limits of maternal love. She loved her son enough to enter these deadly games for him, but she also loved the idea of protecting innocence enough to stop him when he crossed a line. It's a complex, messy, human response to an inhuman situation. Player 456, Seong Gi-hun, the hero's final stand. Gi-hun's elimination in the finale was both inevitable and shocking. This is a character who'd been on a journey of self-destruction and redemption for 3 seasons, and his final act was the culmination of everything he'd learned about humanity and sacrifice. What makes his departure so tragic is that it wasn't about winning anymore. By the end, Gi-hun had found his purpose in protecting Jun-hee's baby. When faced with the choice between his own survival and the infant's future, there was never really a question about what he'd do. "We are not horses, we are humans," he declared before making his final choice. Lee Jung-jae's physical preparation for this role was incredible too, losing 22 pounds over 14 months to show the toll these experiences had taken on Gi-hun. You could see the anguish and pain in every frame, even when he was just standing there. That's commitment to the character right there. Gi-hun's arc was never about being a traditional hero. He was flawed, made mistakes, sometimes let his desire for revenge cloud his judgment. But in the end, he proved that even broken people can choose to do the right thing. His sacrifice wasn't just about saving a baby. It was about proving to the frontman that humanity isn't as corrupt as he believed. Player 333, Lee Myung-gi, the fall of a desperate father. Myung-gi's elimination was different from the others because, honestly, you could see it coming from a mile away. But that didn't make it any less impactful. This guy spent the entire season making increasingly desperate choices, and his final confrontation with Gi-hun was the inevitable result of all that desperation. What makes his story tragic isn't necessarily his elimination itself, but the path that led to it. Here's a man who was the father of Jun-hee's baby, but he was so consumed with his own survival that he couldn't see past his immediate needs. He eliminated Hyunju without even realizing she was protecting his own child and the mother of that child. His final moments, dangling from Gi-hun's jacket before falling to his end, were almost poetic in their irony. He'd spent so much time manipulating others and making calculated moves for his own benefit, only to literally slip through his fingers at the last moment. Player 124, Namgyu, lost in chemical dependency. Namgyu's elimination during the jump rope game was both tragic and inevitable. This character started as Thanos' sidekick, but after losing his leader, he became increasingly dependent on the drugs that had originally belonged to the rapper. Watching him desperately chase after Thanos' necklace when Min-soo threw it onto the bridge was heartbreaking. Here was someone so completely lost to addiction that he'd risk everything for one more high. When he finally reached the necklace, only to find it empty, the look of devastation on his face was genuinely painful to watch. Namgyo's story is a commentary on how trauma and addiction can completely consume a person. Without Thanos to lean on, and without the drugs to numb his fear, he was completely lost. His elimination wasn't just the end of a character. It was the final stage of a downward spiral that had been building throughout the season.
Player 125, Park Min-soo, The Quiet One's Breakdown. Min-soo's character arc is probably one of the most psychologically complex in the series. This quiet, bullied man who lost his only friend, Sammy, in Season 2, slowly descended into madness throughout Season 3, largely due to his use of Thanos' drugs. His elimination of the shaman during hide-and-seek while hallucinating was a turning point for his character. He wasn't just killing another player. In his drug-addled mind, he was fighting his tormentors. The drugs that were supposed to help him cope instead turned him into the very thing he'd always feared becoming. His final moments in the Sky Squid Game, seeing hallucinations of both Thanos and Sammy, were deeply tragic. The drugs had completely fractured his reality, and his elimination by Myung-gi was almost a mercy at that point. Min-soo's story shows how trauma can break even gentle souls when they don't have proper support systems.
Player 7, Park Young-sik, the son who couldn't pull the trigger. Young-sik's elimination was tragic because it came at the hands of his own mother. This gambling addict who dragged his mother into the games with him found himself in a position where he had to choose between his own survival and attacking a new mother with her baby. What makes his story heartbreaking is that you could see the conflict in his eyes. He didn't want to hurt Junhee or her baby, but the game's rules demanded it. His hesitation, his inability to cross that final moral line is what ultimately led to his mother's impossible choice. Young-sik represented the kind of person these games were designed to break. Someone with just enough conscience to hesitate at the crucial moment, but not enough strength to make the right choice consistently. His whispered apologies to his mother as she held him were devastating.
Player 44, Seonyo, The False Prophet's End. The shaman's elimination by a hallucinating Min-soo was both ironic and tragic. Here was someone who'd spent the entire series claiming to see the future, predicting everyone's fate with eerie accuracy, only to be taken out by someone who wasn't even seeing reality clearly. What makes Seonyo's story interesting is how her predictions throughout the season proved remarkably accurate, adding an element of supernatural dread to the proceedings. She'd predicted that none of the players would survive, and she was essentially right. Her own elimination was just another fulfillment of the dark future she'd foreseen.
The Baby, Player 222, The Innocent Survivor. And finally, we have the most unusual elimination of the series. Not because the baby was eliminated, but because everyone else was eliminated around her. This innocent child became the sole survivor of the games, representing both the ultimate victory and the ultimate tragedy. The baby's survival raises so many questions about the nature of victory in this cruel world. She won 45.6 billion won, but at what cost? Her mother sacrificed herself, Ji-hun gave his life to protect her, and she'll grow up never knowing the full extent of what people suffered to ensure her survival. In the end, the baby represents hope for the future, the possibility that the next generation might build a better world than the one that created these games.
But she also represents the weight of survivor's guilt that she'll carry forever, even if she never fully understands it.
You know what really gets me about all these eliminations? It's not just that they happened, it's how they happened. Each one was a direct result of the character's core traits being pushed to their absolute limits. Hyunju's protectiveness, Junhee's maternal love, Gumja's moral compass, Gihan's evolving sense of heroism. These weren't random endings. They were the inevitable conclusions of who these people were at their deepest level. Hwang Dong-hyuk didn't just eliminate characters for shock value. He eliminated them in ways that honored their journeys while simultaneously breaking our hearts. That's what makes Squid Game Season 3 such a masterpiece of storytelling, even as it absolutely destroys us emotionally. These eliminations weren't just plot points. They were statements about human nature, about the choices we make under pressure, about what we're willing to sacrifice for the people we love. And honestly, that's what's going to stick with me long after the credits rolled. What do you think about these heartbreaking departures? Which elimination hit you the hardest? And do you think any of these characters could have made different choices that might have changed their fate? Living each moment, but not overplaying your emotions. Write in the comments, subscribe to the channel, put likes. See you in the next videos.